Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hi, Magic is Real listeners. Thank you so much for being here today. I am honored and grateful to have with me today Julie McFadden, otherwise known as Hospice Nurse Julie. She has a large social media following, TikTok, Instagram. I'll have her explain all the places where you can find her. I just got chills. I invited Julie today because she is a hospice nurse, and on this show, we talk a lot about about afterlife, near-death experiences, spiritually transformative experiences. Now, not only has Julie had a shared death experience and watched a lot of her end-of-life patients experience spiritual things, for lack of a better word, I think it's also important to talk about the death and dying process in all of this, because even though it's wonderful to know that there's more than this after life, it's also very real that grief is very real and preparing for death is very real. So in our human forms, I'm so interested to hear Julie talk about her experiences and what she does to help take the fear out of dying. None of us are probably going to feel excited about it, great about it, comfortable with it, because it is the unknown. But Julie's here to sort of dispel some myths, help kind of calm us down in that area, and also share her experiences with the dying and how that all works, and how we can find some peace amidst our grief. So Julie, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to meet you. I follow you on Instagram, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Quite the intro. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing and I love talking about this stuff. So happy to be here.
Thank you. So first of all, Julie, I'm just going to have you talk a little bit about, you used to be an ICU nurse, and I want to hear about how you got into nursing, what helped you make the transition from the ICU into hospice care.
Well, I got into nursing because I was working in a mental health hospital. I had a degree in psychology, and a woman had a seizure right in front of me and fell and hit her head and was bleeding everywhere. And I freaked out and ran and really was almost like another patient because I was just not helpful at all. And I saw all these nurses running towards this woman it was just very scary. And I couldn't believe there was people that were like, knew what to do and how to help this person. So that initially got me into being like, maybe I want to do what they're doing. So I did. And I became a nurse, and then I fell in love with nursing in nursing school, and I just wanted to be like the baddest nurse there ever was. And to me, that was an ICU nurse or like a flight nurse, something like in my mind, crazy or really cool. So that's what I did. I worked in the ICU, and the first couple years it was really soul crushing because it was not what I expected, in the sense of, let's see, I learned a lot. I'm really glad I did it. And I stayed for 10 years, which I never would recommend someone doing if they don't like something. But the first 2 years were really brutal because, well, one, I learned a lot, so that's great. But it was a lot of like, hurry, 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 rush, 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 like very little connection to people. Surprisingly, you just didn't have the time to like connect with the patient. One, they're usually unconscious anyway, intubated, and you're doing all these things to try to keep them alive. And you don't really have time to comfort the family. Like there was very lack of time to, like, you can't hurry up and care. At least I can't.
Right.
I could not like hurry up and care about somebody. Like you get a lot of compassion fatigue, which means like, I know I'm a loving, caring person. I know my colleagues are too, but when you're so stressed and so overworked, it's very hard to like look at somebody day in and day out and like treat them. It's hard to explain, like, not like, of course we're treating them like they're humans, but it becomes very robotic, at least for me. I guess I should speak for my experience. It became very robotic, very like, just not what I thought. And it really slowly wore me down. Um, and I also felt like we were doing a disservice to our patients and their families by, we as healthcare workers, us and the doctors surrounding, and I don't think we did this purposely. I just don't think we knew how to do it. So we would talk openly with each other about what was really happening with the patient, knowing they were going to die. And it wasn't like we were keeping it secret. It was just like we weren't, I don't know. It was like the culture. The culture was like, we don't, we just didn't talk about the end goal. It was like in rounds with the family, we'd talk about like little wins. The creatinine's better, their kidneys are looking better, their we would talk about these little wins, and the families would cling to that, and we as healthcare workers would not talk like that, at least not always. It would be like we kind of knew they would eventually die. And or if we weren't saying that, I know we still knew it, because I know I knew it deep down after a while, after being a nurse for a while and seeing it. So once I got a little more confident, maybe year 3 or 4, I started speaking up and saying, when are we going to have a talk with the family? When are we going to have a family meeting about what's really happening with this patient? Like, can we do that? Should we do that? And what I noticed was all it took was that one little thing to be said. And then people were like, oh yeah, okay. And like what I said mattered. And the person didn't live, right? Like they didn't survive the outcome just because I spoke up. But what they did have was a more peaceful death, and a more, their family didn't have to struggle for months on end to get the same result of their loved one eventually dying. So I started seeing that I could have a real impact by speaking up, and that it wasn't like anyone was trying to do wrong by anybody else. No one, we just didn't talk about it. And all it took was one person to talk about it, and it really made a difference. So that got my brain working into, how do we have these conversations? How do we do this with every patient? What would that look like if we did? And eventually I just moved into hospice because the ICU in the hospital setting was just too much for me in general. And then I switched into hospice. It was just sort of, people always say, like, how did that happen? It was just sort of like one day I just did it. As a nurse, other nurses will know what I mean. It can be hard to leave the place you're used to, even if you don't like it.
Yeah.
And it's just like one day you just do it. One day I just did it. And now here I am 5 years later. Thank God.
Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
God.
that. No, I think that's such a really excellent point, that the ER is a place to save lives. It's not a place to, even just having gone there for things that aren't life-threatening, never got a diagnosis. It's not, they don't have time. They're there. If
Yeah.
you're not dying, you're not going to get a lot of attention, and that's understandable under the circumstances. But in a life or death situation, as you said, you are the person. If somebody dies, you are the last face, and your words are the last words this family is going to hear.
Yeah.
And that could impact them for the rest of their life. It's already traumatic enough to have somebody suddenly have to go to the ER. And it's part of being a care provider in those circumstances, that it's not just about sewing somebody up. It's about compassion and guiding them through the scariest time of their life, which, like you said, don't blame people for not having time to do that, but it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And so I understand that need, and that's why I think hospice is so special. Can you tell people what hospice exactly is and what it entails?
Um, Man, I could go like on and on. I don't want to make it boring, because it can be. So like the thing. So hospice is it's funded by Medicare, first off,
Okay.
in America anyway. So in America, it's funded by Medicare. So it's a federally funded program, which means every hospice should basically work the same, meaning they all should supply the same things. Doesn't always happen, but they should. And because of that, though, there's like very specific criteria we have to follow per Medicare guidelines. Um, So hospice is an end of life program, I would say. People don't necessarily die right away on hospice. Like I think people will say like, "Oh, I'm not there yet," because I think they think in order to go on hospice, you have to be 2 days from death. And that's what we're trying to not have. We're trying to get people on hospice sooner so they can enjoy their life, because hospice will help manage their symptoms that they're having, not from death, but from, or at the end of life, but from their disease, the end stages of their disease. So hospice is an end of life program. You usually have to have about, and this is a gray, like quote, about 6 months, give or take. So about 6 months left of whatever disease you have. And then depending on the specific disease, it has to be quote unquote terminal, and then whatever disease it is, there has to be other criteria. So like Alzheimer's dementia is a little harder to get onto hospice because it's a chronic long-term illness. And there's a lot of things you have to meet in order to get onto hospice to prove that you are like advanced enough in that disease. Now, specific cancers, those might be a little easier to get on, or less criteria because of the trajectory of that disease, and it just depends. So there's a bunch of criteria to get onto hospice, and it's to me it's like a program about life, even though it seems like it's about death, because really some diseases, the symptoms are hard to manage, and they're even harder if you're not on hospice, because once you're on hospice, it's kind of like no holds bar. Like we're gonna control those symptoms with whatever we can do, and we won't be super. If you're not on hospice, a lot of doctors are afraid to prescribe really high doses of narcotics or really high doses of steroids, or really because they don't want to. Sometimes the risk of doing that outweighs the benefit, or vice versa. So on hospice, though, we're really like, no, we're gonna throw the kitchen sink at the symptoms you have so you can come to life again. And I've seen tons of hospice patients finally get their pain managed, and they really do live a good 3 months isn't a long time, right? But the last 3 months is a good 3 months where their pain's managed, their nausea and vomiting is managed, and they can actually do things. So it is an end of life program, but it is for the living, and to
Right.
help people, just to help people be in their home. Like that's what I always say. If you know you're going to die, which for lack of better words sucks,
Hmm.
right? But if you know, how do you want to do it? How do you want to do it? Like you have the choice. Do you want to uh, be in your home and have people come to you and have your symptoms managed? Or do you not? Do you want to go in and out of urgent care, in and out of the ER, get admitted to the hospital, die in a hospital bed? And if someone says, I'd rather have that, then go for it, please. I want people to do what they want. But I also want them to be, I don't want hospice to be such a bad word,
Yeah, I
because I've
love
seen it
that.
help so many people,
And my
you
mom
know.
did worked as a hospice volunteer. She's not a hospice.
Oh,
What do you call it? I mean, she's not a hospice nurse, but as part of the program, I don't exactly understand how that works, but she would go and hang out with the people and talk to them and comfort them and just
that's
it sounds more
great.
like she just kind of went to spend time with them.
Yeah,
And so we've had some talks about this stuff as well, and it interests me a lot. And actually, I've been wanting to find a hospice nurse like you for ages. So one of my friends now, who started off as a listener and now is a great friend, said, "Have you checked out this woman?" So I was really excited about that.
well,
Um,
that's great.
yeah, and I would love to know what your spiritual beliefs might have been before. A lot of people in the medical field are strictly science. Maybe they're Christian, but you don't hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, I go in there." I believe in afterlife. So many doctors and nurses are very scientific minded. So I'd love to know maybe what your background was in terms of spirituality, religion, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that topic in general. So, even way before I was a nurse, I've always been like a seeker and a spiritual person. I mean, I grew up like Irish Catholic, which
Hmm.
whatever. I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad or good, but I wasn't like connected to that, right? But even as a little girl, I would ask like very deep existential questions about life and death and where we come from and what is God, and it just was it was always fascinating to me. So I've always been like that, and I still am like that. Um, I feel like I mean, yeah, I guess I wouldn't consider myself religious. I feel like at one time in my life, I probably was. I was like more Christian based. But the closer I became to like know Jesus, if we want to talk religion, the less and less I became interested in being labeled a Christian. And the more I became involved in the Christian church, which again, this is like a whole nother topic. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers here, but like
Yeah.
the
It's
more
your
I got into the
story.
Christian church, the less and less I wanted to be involved.
Mhm.
So that's just been my experience. And so I've taken on more of a spiritual, like I love the teaching of Jesus. By no means do I think if you don't believe in Jesus, like I just don't believe that there's like a fiery end to anybody, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty hard to like belong to any type of church that would say that
Right.
if you don't follow this way, you're not going to be in a good place when you die. So I definitely don't believe that. So in general, I'm just a person who's a seeker. I'm definitely spiritual. I never, ever, ever bring it into work unless someone asks me.
Right.
Like if someone wants that, 100%, I'm down. If someone wants to pray to Jesus and be Christian, 100%, let's do this. If
Yeah.
someone isn't that, that's okay too. I would never. I've definitely seen people cross the line, in my opinion, and ask to pray for somebody or without knowing what they believe in. And I personally think that's incredibly wrong and actually does a huge disservice to the person and to our profession. So I feel like we can't proselytize at all as hospice nurses. But if someone's into it and
Yeah.
asks me to and opens the door, like let's do this. I'm into talking about it. But I never would bring it into the house or into the conversation unless asked.
Right. Well, you wouldn't. And that's why it's so nice that you do have, if people do want to hear more, you don't just talk about the spiritual stuff by any means on your social media, but you do mention it and
Yeah.
you do talk about it. And I think that way, if somebody is curious or they are faced with their own mortality, they can say, oh, wow, I do want to learn more. And obviously, in the workplace, you just can't do that. You can't share that with people. But I think it's wonderful that you do speak out about it too, because I'm not saying no doctors or nurses believe in afterlife, but a lot don't. Scientists tend not to, people with scientific minds. And I personally think that science and spirituality are all the same thing, and they don't have to be considered
Yeah.
two
It
different
doesn't.
things at all. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, evolution, and yes, where did evolution come from? So that kind of thing. But I would assume that you weren't necessarily. I have such big chills, and I'm a medium, so like I was gonna say, if I'm probably
Oh my
gonna
gosh,
end
I
up with.
love it.
I know I'm
Or
like
I don't know if that's good or bad. And
no, it
do you
actually
like it or?
I do like it. I love it. In fact, I did a interview. My last interview I did with Mark Ireland, I was sitting with him and I started to hear something. And I said it on the podcast. I was like, and if I do, I'll tell you too. Sometimes I usually wait till after I interview them in case I'm wrong. But every time I've gone, okay, I went through that whole interview. Is this person make sense? They're like, yes. So I asked him, I'm like, I keep seeing Charlie Brown, and I didn't say it. He was like, oh, I think it's because like my family's dog is in the hospital. I was like, no, that's not what it is. But okay. And I was like, I keep seeing the shirt and the little coil on the head and Charlie Brown. And then the next day, he's like, I remember what that was. It's when my cousin, who was like my brother, was little, his mother, who's in spirit, called him Charlie Brown. And I was like, well, then that means she's coming through. So
Wow.
I'm actually
Wow.
going to read him later and see what she wants. I'm sure she wanted to say something because she was giving that reference. But I think also people tell me when you are sitting with someone who works in hospice or um, is works in a mortuary, apparently you get a lot more spirit activity just
Oh
because
wow.
so many spirits
Interesting.
want to thank you for your work, I think. But
Oh
we'll
my
see what
gosh.
that's about. I just suddenly am like, okay, I got it. Everybody wants to come in now. And that's
Sure.
great. But I'll
Oh
definitely
my
give you
God, that's
messages
amazing.
as they do because I'm getting like
Aw.
dizzy. I'm feeling all kinds of feelings. It's exciting. I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. That's why I do this podcast. Magic is real. It's so cool.
It is
So
so cool.
but enough about me. But if something comes through for you, I'm hearing like a million, I feel like a cacophony of people. So
Wow.
my question is, so you go to nursing school, you you're a nurse, you go into hospice. I would love to hear for some of the stories that you have about, well, let's start with yours. Sorry. As I told you when we started today, I was like, I'm feeling a little under the weather, so I'm a little scattered.
No, it's fine. You're
I would
great.
love, I think that what we'll talk about first is your shared death experience, because I know so many people are just itching and they're going to be like, forward to this thing. And I want them to hear
Yeah.
everything. So if we don't get to it, they might want to skip over this. So I would love to hear your experience. Start from wherever you like.
Yeah. I wish, you know what I wish? I mean, I can't because of confidentiality reasons, but I wish I could like tell you who this guy was and
Yeah.
explain it and like have you guys picture him in your mind's eye, because he was just so wonderful. And like not only was my shared death experience special, but like he was special and meeting him was special. And that's how I feel with a lot of my patients, where it's like, wow, I just love connecting with people, and I feel like that is what life is all about.
Mm-hmm.
So side note. um but in this particular case, he was a younger guy, and compare, he wasn't like a 90-year-old man, right? So a younger man. He didn't have much friends or family. A lot of mental health issues when we found him, or when we found him, when he came on to hospice. But like, and we really, there was a lot to do for him besides get him comfortable so he can have a peaceful death whenever that came. He was a hoarder. That there was a lot of like psychosocial issues. So we did a lot as a team, as a hospice team, not just me, the whole hospice team, to help this guy. We like cleaned out his whole house. We got him in touch with some cousins who also helped. And um, and he lived a really good life, like last 6 7 months, however long he was on hospice. And he always thanked us, and he didn't have tons of symptoms, so like I spent a lot of my time just talking with him. I'm building this all up so you guys understand the relationship. And it was just special, and he meant a lot to all of us. And it's not very often that many hospice patients will sit there with you and really talk about their fears and their hopes and their, and what they think death will be like. And like, a lot of times people won't do that, or they have someone else to do it with.
Yeah.
So which is totally fine. I don't need to be that person. But in this particular case, I was that person. And so was our social worker. So needless to say, when he was finally actively dying, which is like the last phase of dying, when you're usually going to be anywhere from a few days to a few hours before death, we did have a continuous care nurse in there with him, which just meant there was 24-hour nursing, which doesn't happen often, side note. But for him, we got it. And I could tell he was going to die that day when I walked in. He was fully unconscious, totally actively dying, not responding to anything. And I was okay with that. I'm a hospice nurse. I just wanted him to go peacefully. And I kind of just said some words in my head, to him about like, I hope, thank you so much I'm so happy I met you. Like, I wish you all the peace, like, go well. I can't remember what I said, but I said something in my head. And I said goodbye to the continuous care nurse. I just basically said, call me when he dies. And I left. And I was in my car, kind of doing the same thing in my car, just sort of like reflecting on our relationship and how amazing he is and was, and just hoping he has a really peaceful, easy death, and like thanking him for like all the gifts he gave me. And as I was doing that, it was like he came into my head. And um even now as I talk about it, it like feels like, did that really happen? Am I making this up? Like
Yeah.
you second guess yourself. And then I've been telling the story over and over again too, that you start being like, is this real? But I know it's real
I
because I
know.
called my best friend afterwards, and she vouches for me still to this day, because she's the only person I really told about it. I was like, dude, something weird just happened to
Yeah.
me. Like, can you vouch? Like, I don't know what's going on here, but something weird just happened. And it was crazy. But yeah, so it came into my head, and it was like, best way I could describe it is like I could see his face and hear his voice, and he was saying my name. He was saying like, "Oh my gosh, Julie, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. This is like, if I only would have known, like if I only would have known." I don't think he actually said if I only would have known how good this is. I think that was like implied by
Hmm.
how we felt, but if I only would have known, if I only would have known. wow, this is so amazing. It's so amazing. And the feeling was like almost like he was flying, like soaring. And it was like this overwhelming feeling of like joy and love and freedom and just exuberance of like it's hard to put into words. And I've actually felt this before,
Mhm.
not with another person, like not from another person, but just in general. Hence why I feel like there's an afterlife and there's a
Yeah.
God or something, because I've felt this feeling before.
Yep.
And it was like that, but it was coming from him. And I mean, he was just going, I cannot believe how good this is. Oh my gosh, Julie. Oh my gosh, Julie. And I could see the smile on his face. And it was like, he just looked so amazing and so almost like kiddish, like almost like laughing, like almost like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. If I only knew how good this was. And it was just like that over and over and over again. And I was like weeping because it was just so incredibly beautiful. And I was so happy for him. And that's it. And that lasted
Yeah.
for like 30 seconds. And then it stopped, and I was sort of in my car, like, whoa, wow, what the hell? And then my phone beeped, and I had a text from the girl inside saying, so and so just died. And I was thinking, like, yeah, I think I know that because I think he just showed me that he was
Yeah.
dying or what it was like to die. And I didn't say that to her, obviously. I mean, I just said, thank you. And was just kind of shell shocked for like a day or so. I mean, I still am to this day talking about it. A
Yeah.
little like just not at all weirded out. It was amazing, but just I don't know what else to say except for like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it
And
was
it
great.
thank you for sharing that. I know you are not alone at all. It is something we don't hear about as much as we hear about near death experiences, which some people don't even like to call them near death because they're like, I died. I was
Yeah.
dead. There is wasn't near, it was I died, but I came back. And it really is an interesting phenomenon that more and more people are speaking about. I just did a episode of the Jeanette Biro podcast. She is also a medium, and she had a near death experience, and we talked about shared death experiences. So I'll have to send that to you. But it
Yeah.
is actually not as unusual as you would think. So, and I'm sure with treating all of the people that you do form these connections. And I see why you went into hospice. The fact that you do get involved in their lives, you're not just taking care of their physical body. You're going if you actually have the opportunity to make a difference and to say, "Hey, let's organize this person's," and obviously you did that out of the kindness of your heart, but you are making such a huge difference. Who else would have stepped up to do all of that? So, it's
Yeah.
also this opportunity to just be a human being and what you would do for anybody that needed it, and it's just such a beautiful thing to be able to incorporate that into your work. After this happened to you, did you like research this and go, what was that? Or did you just take it at face value? Like, that's what it was. I got what I needed to know. And did you ever question why this might have happened to you as opposed to somebody else?
No, because I kind of feel like I know that I have like abilities to sense things. And yeah, this isn't like the first time. I think that was the first time I had something like that obvious where I
Yeah.
couldn't like deny stuff. But in general, like to me, being around anyone dying feels sacred. And I definitely there's like I've always felt like I could sense things in general. So like
Yep.
I didn't think it was that weird. And if anything, I kind of like deny that happens to me more than I accept that I if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
yeah. So when something like that obvious happens, it's like hard to deny.
Yeah. And it's such an unusual experience from our perspective that even I've talked about the fact that when I do mediumship, because I haven't been doing it since I was a kid. I mean, I have, but didn't realize it.
Yeah.
That I'm constantly like second guessing myself.
Yeah.
For like 2 years, I've given readings and people are saying, oh, they're not every single reading is amazing, but like most of them, something amazing comes through. And I just say that to to let people know it's not a perfect science. It's not like you knock it out of the park every single time. And it depends on your energy levels and so many things. And whether you're able, the spirit is in the right vibration to you and whether you're connected with this person. So, but the thing is that I'm constantly going, that was the best reading ever. And then a week later going, wait, what was it? Did that really happen?
Yeah.
What did I just
I
guess? Did I get
I
lucky?
know. Am
What
I
if they
making
just,
this up?
yeah, it's so out of the realm of what we were taught reality
Yes.
is.
Yes. And I find that, like, just in general, like, I can kind of oh God. Shannon, I'm saying more things than not that I'm afraid. I just don't usually tell everybody this, but like, because I am shy about it. But like, the closer I am to you, and there's certain people for some reason that I feel like I can look at and kind of be like, bada 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 bada, and like just say a bunch of things that like I sense about them,
Yep.
right? And so that's why, like, when that happened with me and this guy, I was like, oh well, I was really close with him. He was, I mean, I was really close with a lot of patients, but like we had a really strong bond. So it wasn't like, what the hell? Because it kind of it just I was like, what the hell? Because it was so profound, but it made sense
Yeah.
because I was really connected with him.
Yeah.
Because that had been happening to me, not in death and dying, but just in people I was close with. I've been able to kind of sense
Yeah.
certain things
I feel that
and
is
know certain
strongly
things.
from you. And that's usually when I sit with another medium, that's when I get a lot of energy. And there's always that energy, which I definitely feel. You do have that ability, which is such a great gift to be able to offer your patients. And I don't mean that you tell people you do it, but just
Yeah.
there are things that you know that you can share. You don't have to explain how you know it, but that can bring a lot of peace. So I'd love to know, I know this isn't the first experience you've had in terms of witnessing spiritual experiences. There are some things that I've read about the work that you do and what happens as the body begins to quote unquote die, but leave the body. As the soul begins to leave the body, some things happen. Not every single person has these experiences, but if you would, can we talk about, I know there's the rallying thing, but then there's also the people start to
Visioning.
the visioning is the word.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the phenomena that I see, that's what I call it. I don't know if we should call it that or not, but like the
Okay.
things, but like even doctors and nurses who are only scientific, right? I'm sorry, I'm like in the shadow.
It's
I don't know.
totally
Is it
fine.
okay?
You look great.
Um, so even doctors and nurses who are purely scientific and don't want to believe X, Y, and Z, which is fine. Like that's the whole my page. Like I do share spirituality, but I also say that like my intention is not to make you believe something spiritual. Like
Hmm.
all I can tell you is what happens. So even those doctors and nurses who work in this arena would say this happens. Like we don't know why it happens, but it does. So it's not like and what it is we call it visioning. Lack of a better word, we call it visioning.
Hmm.
And it's when people start seeing dead relatives, people they loved, friends, pets. It's always someone they loved. Um, if it's not and they're agitated and scared, not visioning.
Right.
Not visioning.
That's how,
That's the
yeah.
because I worked in the ICU for years where people had ICU psychosis, delirium. That is not visioning. People will be like, I know what that is. I see it all the time. And it's like, no, you don't. Because I would worked in the hospital for 10 years. That's not visioning. I didn't
Yep.
see, I saw people having ICU psychosis and delirium and that's not what this is like. Most people, number one, are lucid. So they're alert and oriented and they're fully functioning. They don't have low oxygen. They didn't just take a bunch of medication. They're not loopy. And they say they see their dad, or they saw their parents. They came to them last night. Or sometimes you can be in the room and they'll be like, they're sitting right there. I
Yeah.
can see them. Or they don't want to say that because they feel weird, so they'll take me over and they'll be like, Julie, like something's going on with me. I keep seeing my dad and he's telling me coming, like it's not my time, but he's coming to get me soon. And I always, and then I just say like, do you feel okay about it? And they're like, yeah, great. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's normal. And I don't know why it happens, but it does. Sometimes it comes in dreams, but that's that's not really what I would call visioning. I would call that dreaming. It's
Yeah.
still great, but because visioning is like profound, like they see it happening, and you don't have to be. Sometimes they're not alert and oriented. Sometimes they are confused, and that's okay too. But it happens like so much. People always want to hear like specific stories, and it's hard because it happens so
That's
much that like
that's what I
I
was going
don't
to
even
ask.
remember the story. Like I don't remember because there it's almost not profound anymore because it's such a part of it
Yep.
that it's like every day. It's like next, like, yeah, that just happens. And anyone who works in hospice would say that's what happens. It's
Yeah.
not like a once in a while thing.
Which I think is even more compelling. And my mom had the same experience. Sorry, mom, if I mess up the story. It happened a long time ago, but she did work with this one woman. I remember this, and it was like 20 years ago. So if I get the details wrong, but it was just that thing where she was going and she started to say, "Who are these? There are these people here," and she was kind of pointing out. I believe, if I recall properly, that she was seeing indicating that she was seeing her husband and her sons or whoever was there. She was an elderly woman and definitely started to talk about all the people that she saw.
Hmm.
It's not unusual. It really isn't. And so I think just even you saying that it's more usual than it is unusual is is a lot of evidence that something's happening because as you said, yes, people will hallucinate when they're medicated, for example, or when they have my aunt had dementia, and so she was
Hmm.
always hallucinating people and
Hmm.
throwing F-bombs at them and telling them to get out of her closet and stop stealing her stuff and,
Yes, yes, yes.
and but that was different. She was actually having hallucinations because of
That
her
is different.
illness.
Yes.
So, I've heard this so much that I think it's such an interesting thing, and I've also heard this story of people sort of reaching up at the
Hmm.
last moment. Does how often does that happen, or is it kind of the same thing where it happens always?
It's kind of the same thing. I feel like, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It doesn't necessarily mean at the last moment. I wouldn't say it
Yeah,
happens a lot at the last moment,
yeah.
right? But it does happen a lot where I just had an elderly lady. It's either the reaching or like staring. And it was the most beautiful moment. So I mean by like connecting and feeling things. It was an elderly woman, family all around her, and she would not stop staring at this one part of the wall. And no matter what people would do, yell her name. And then I'm the nurse and I like love being with patients and
Yeah.
families, and I'm not uncomfortable whatsoever, just hopping right in there. And I like get right in her face and I'm like, hey, like trying to introduce myself. And she didn't move her face, but she looked at me and then looked up, and I'm like, what are you looking at? And I looked up there and I looked back and smiled at her, and she smiled and like pointed. And she was, whatever she was seeing, it was like the best. I'm getting chills. It was like,
Yeah.
I knew it was something good, and I was so happy for her. And I felt like her and I had a moment where like I didn't see what she was seeing, but
Yeah.
I could tell that she was okay. And it's just such, you get those moments all the time in hospice. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, that
Or
I love hearing you say that it's so beautiful
yeah.
because so
Hmm.
many people think of death as such a bad thing and so many people are afraid of it. What was it that I'm sure it's kind of it may be a simple answer, but I'd just love to hear anyway. What was it that prompted you to start sharing all of this on social media?
I knew I had a lot of, there are so many interesting, beyond the spiritual stuff, right? Like the fact of how, like the facts about death and dying, about how our bodies die.
Mhm.
I'm like seeing that over and over and over again over 5 years was like incredible to me. And I had a friend whose dad was dying over quarantine, like 2020, 2021. I was kind of helping them navigate the whole hospice program. Oh, it must have been 2020 because I started anyway. Before I was doing TikTok, I was helping my friend. And I was
Yeah.
saying all these things down, all the different facts that I knew. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is insane. No, I can't believe people don't know this. I can't believe no one else has said this to me. What if I didn't
Right.
know you? How would I know these things?" And I thought, yeah, you're right. No one does talk about this stuff. So I went to go see my nieces once we were all vaccinated, and they're 12 and 13, and they're on TikTok. And
Hmm.
I thought it was funny and a joke, and I'd always make fun of them. And I'm like the old aunt to them,
Oh yeah. I
And
don't, I'm always, I'm barely on it because I don't even understand it.
if you get on it, you'll be instantly addicted. So I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah.
Even though I'm fully addicted
I
to,
know.
but um, yeah. So I was initially making fun of it, and then I started actually watching it to see their dances and stuff because they were doing stupid little dances on there. And then I started seeing people who were like educating, and it was amazing. And I thought, I'm gonna make a few videos and just see what happens. And it took 4 days. 4 days. I posted like I just made the main videos that I think are the coolest about death and
Yeah.
dying that I want everyone to know. And that's it. 4 days in, like one video took off, and it like hasn't stopped. I had like hundreds of thousands of followers in like a matter of a couple months, you
That's
know?
insane. And obviously, you are very lovely and compelling, but it is a testimony to how
Yeah.
fascinated people are with death,
Yeah.
how much comfort they need around death, which is why I do this podcast as well, to bring some comfort and hope to people because even people who have had near death experiences still don't know what happens when you're dead.
Yeah.
Is there another level when, if you don't come back, what
Yes.
happens then? Nobody knows. And
Yeah.
it's just so interesting that I think people are in so much, especially in these times, need
Mhm.
some comfort, need some hope. And you have this way of being very matter of fact and very approachable and not clinical, and also providing hope that there's a lot of reassurance in your videos. There's a lot
Yeah.
of, hey, if you start to see that your loved one isn't eating or drinking, it's normal. We're not starving them. The body doesn't need food anymore. It's turning away from that. And so this is part of the process so that people go in there having a better understanding of what the process is like for themselves, if
Yeah.
they're in that situation, for their loved ones. And I'm sure it makes everyone's job easier too when you're working in the field for your people to understand
Yes.
what you're doing because everyone just wants that's the most frightening and uncertain time a person can go through.
Yes. I think people really fear death because they really don't understand it. And it's easy for they really don't understand. And I know I understand people don't want to die,
Yeah.
neither do I.
Neither do I. Yeah.
Yeah. But um and I don't know. And so I understand that. And from what I've witnessed, is the body is actually biologically built to do it. And if we don't get in the way of that, um, it will take care of itself. And it doesn't so I feel like just even knowledge is power, and it can help decrease the fear around dying, because I think what happens is we're so afraid of it, we'll
Yeah.
do anything not to do it, not to die, and we end up suffering, suffering,
Hmm.
suffering, suffering, and the family suffers, and then you die anyway. Then you die anyway. That's what I not everybody, right? I'm talking about a very specific population of people. I know this is different if you, God forbid, get hit by a bus or something
Yeah.
crazy, but I mean, like, there's just certain diseases that we have that, as of right now, we don't know what to do. And I think because of the fear, we do more than we should. And I think I always say, death is not the worst thing.
I say that
That's,
too.
yeah, it
I
isn't.
always say death isn't the worst thing that can happen to you.
Yeah, no, I don't want that to be like a thing. Death is not. And I think suffering is far worse.
Yep.
And I think we do a poor job in our healthcare system. And again, like, I'm not trying to push blame, and because I was one of these people too, where like we take for granted that people know more than they do about their own body and health and wellness and their disease that they're dying from. We take that as healthcare workers, we forget that they are not in this. realm every day. And we don't do a good job at being like, we don't want to say that they're going to die.
Yeah.
So we like tiptoe around it and like use different words so they don't fully understand, right? Where I do think there comes a time and place where you say like, we have to, obviously I say it compassionately, but
Yeah.
but you have to say you are going to die. That's
Mhm.
inevitable. This whole idea of like only God knows, and I'm spiritual. I believe in God, and I know what people mean by that.
Yeah.
Yes, only God knows, and I know through being a hospice nurse that you probably, by looking at you and knowing your disease, you probably have about 6 months left. Let's say even 3 months. I can guarantee you that almost. If you know that, how do you want to do it? I think there needs to be blunt conversations like that more
Yeah.
all the time. And it's
I do
scary and it's
too.
awful, but it's like that gives the person the chance to choose what they want. Um, I don't know. Now I got you got me on my soapbox.
No,
You
you did
got
a
me on
great
my
job.
soapbox.
Very clear, very clear. I understand exactly what you're saying. And I
Yeah.
do think that we need to talk about death more. I remember when my grandmother was dying, she had pulmonary fibrosis, which is a
Mhm,
horrible thing. It goes
mhm,
on and
mhm,
on and
mhm,
on
mhm.
as your lungs begin to basically turn to scar tissue. And
Yes.
so you can just breathe less every day. And it's horrible and uncomfortable and painful. And uh, I really opened up the conversation with her. I called her every week. I would say, "How are you feeling? This must be scary for you. Let's talk about it." And she was not spiritual, but I started to talk to her a little bit about afterlife. This was before the podcast, because this was maybe, gosh, it was 5 years now. It does not feel that much, but I had read a lot of books about this, so I got her. I said, "I'm not trying to push it on you, but I just want you to know that there are a lot of people that have described it this way." And we talked about it all the time, and I remember telling my boyfriend at the time, who I lived with, yeah, I was just talking to grandma, but asked her, when she dies, does she want me there and what's she feeling? And he's like, I think that's really weird. I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "It's so morbid." He's like,
You're like,
"Maybe you don't
we're
wanna."
done.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
no,
kidding.
I know, but it's like one of the things where we differed where,
Yeah.
it's like, maybe it's Mars and Venus, but it's also like, I think we need to talk about the, these things. I think it's important. It's
Yes.
happening. We're not gonna
Yes.
I'm like, I think I might have said, "My grandmother knows she's dying."
Yeah.
The worst thing would be to tiptoe around it and just pretend nothing's happening. Meanwhile, she's experiencing deep loneliness, deep fear, because she was very
Mhm.
afraid. And
Yes.
told my mom that she kind of went along with my spiritual talk, but didn't really believe in it at all. And so here I was thinking I'm comforting her, and she's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I don't believe in any of this stuff." But
Mm.
so she had a lot of fear, and she was very frightened, and just for people to not discuss it and keep going, "So how's your day? Are you having a great day? And here's some flowers." And meanwhile, inside, she's terrified. I think it's important to let people talk about their feelings around it. And also, it's the one thing we all have in common. We're all going to die. It's just a matter of
Yes.
method of death.
Yes.
So, and then sometimes I even have those moments existential where I wake up and I'm
Me
like,
too.
"Oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to die."
Mhm.
Even though I talk to the dead people, I know they're not dead. I understand, and I'm very excited to see what it's like, but I have just so much planned for this life, and so I
Yes.
wanna stay. But I think it is
Yes.
so important that you are bringing it to light. And then what do you think, what's something that once you went into hospice might have been something that you didn't ever think about before or surprised you?
Everything. So this is definitely more like biological and like
Yeah,
science based, but like how the body dies.
yeah.
I had no idea. I had no idea.
Wow.
I was like, as an ICU nurse, we just did so many things to keep someone alive. And that was amazing too. It's amazing. Like science, our science is amazing. We do help people. We do keep people alive. We save people's lives. That's not, but to watch someone die naturally, and I would say a hospice is the natural death, even though you're dying from something. Um, how our body actually takes care of us is like fascinating. How the more dehydrated you are, the better you feel. by the body will start shutting down your appetite, start shutting down, or start increasing your sleep, start, like it starts releasing endorphins so you don't feel hungry or thirsty. It starts increasing your calcium so you sleep more. Like it's incredible.
It's
I mean,
amazing.
to me that is also spiritual,
I was
like
just thinking the
that's
same thing.
like, yeah, that's like, that is science, that is science.
Yep.
And isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible that our bodies are built that way?
Yep.
And I just see it over and over and over and over and over again. And that's fascinating. It's amazing. I think everyone should know that. I think people need to understand and listen to their bodies.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
That's
So that's the
interesting
biggest
because
thing.
thank you. As soon as you said that, I thought that is spiritual. It feels intelligent.
Hmm.
It's intelligent design to me that
Yeah.
the body knows how, like women giving birth, your body knows what to do. People dying, your body knows what to do. When you're in shock or fear, when you experience a trauma, your body knows what to do. I mean, it doesn't always do the thing that's the most beneficial to you in the long run, but your brain knows how to protect yourself from further danger. And all of these things that happen to the body to help it adapt, including making death easier. And that's why a lot of skeptics
Hmm.
say it's just your brain being flooded with endorphins, and you start hallucinating because it's your brain's way of softening the blow of death. And
Okay.
we could argue that all. I don't like I
Yeah.
say, you and I don't have any interest in arguing with anybody about
Yeah.
it. I just, even if it was true, I would rather believe what I believe. It's
Yeah.
just but I also, having interviewed so many people who've had near death experiences, it would be really a really strange design for everyone to see the same thing, their loved ones, these celestial beings getting the same types of messages. If that's a chemical reaction, I mean, that's really specific. So that's just my take on that.
Well, what I always say too is that, like, people who are like, it's a release of DMT. So first off,
Right.
okay, that's just like one instance, or
Yeah.
whatever chemical you want to put in there.
Yep.
First off, you don't know that. Like, I also am saying, like, I don't know,
Yep.
but we don't know. So to say to people who always say, because all of my viral videos happen usually are about um, the visioning, end of life visioning. And
Yeah.
so with all of the views, you also get a lot of
Oh,
like
I
a lot
know.
of haters, right? So, which I
Yep.
don't care, but um, it's like, yes, you can be as certain as you want, but that's also not fact.
Yep.
It is not fact that DMT is released. That is not a fact. so
Yep.
so it's not like we have, this has been disproven and it is a release of DMT. That's not true. That's also a theory. Just like just like someone saying they really are seeing something and there is an afterlife, that's also a theory too. Like,
Yep.
so just because one sounds more realistic, I guess, or more science based, doesn't make it more true,
Yeah.
because it's not. We didn't there's not a study that says this. It's just
Right.
a theory.
Yep. And I have people say that about mediumship, like, oh, you're fake, you're a fake. That's not possible. And I'm like, you believe it's not possible. It's not a
Yeah.
fact. And in
Yeah.
fact, I believe that what I'm doing is possible and real. That's also not a fact. That's my
Yeah.
belief based on my experience.
Yeah.
I can't tell you if I'm talking to dead people or I'm accessing other dimensions or if I'm just really lucky or if people just hear what they want to hear. But I've had enough experience to, I know with 100%, I know 100% that that I am able to, we are all able to receive information from the spirit world. What it consists of, how it happens, what it's made of, I don't know. I just know that for some reason there's something happening, and I don't claim to know, and I don't think we should claim to know. I also
Yeah.
claim that I am also always approach everything with skepticism as well. Healthy skepticism. In my experience, I am completely convinced. If you're not, that's okay too. That's fine.
Hmm.
We don't have to argue about it. I would, like I said, I would rather have the hope and the inspiration of knowing that death is just a transition. It's not
Hmm.
an end. And you also talk, I mean, I think in a lot of your work, so much of what you do really does help help heal people when they're in grief and fear. And I would love for you, it could be anything that comes to mind. I'm sure there are a million things. What is it that you want people to know about the dying process or about dying in general?
I think, man, there's a lot of things, but when I first started out, one of the main things I wanted to get across was that people who were able to talk about their fears, right? So let's take, I hope it's okay. Let's take your grandma, for example,
Yeah.
right? Like she was really afraid. She didn't want to talk about it. I don't know if she ever did or not, but people, what I found was people who are willing to discuss, even willing to discuss saying, I don't want to discuss this. I'm afraid. Like
Yeah.
that's even a step ahead of like most people. You, it's it's not hard to have a peaceful death. People can still have a peaceful death even if they aren't accepting it, but it makes it much easier and much easier to care for the person. And they usually have a more peaceful death, not with acceptance of dying, but like with the ability to discuss it.
Yeah.
Something about like the discuss. So be willing to discuss how you're feeling, and the person you're telling, be willing to not fix it and just listen. Like
Hmm.
what really, it's so hard for people to go. Like when someone says, I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid to die, or I don't want to die. Those two things are the most powerful thing you can say to someone else. And the other person hearing that just needs to not say anything, or just say, me too, or
Yeah.
I get it. Not, no, 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 don't,
Yeah.
it's okay. Don't fear that. It's like,
Yeah. Hang on. We
we
fro.
want to
Okay.
make it better somehow. And really all we need is just connect. I know, sorry. All we need is connection. So that's one thing. Talking about it, even if it's you saying like, I don't want to talk about it, I'm scared. That's already ahead of most people.
Yeah.
And knowing that your body takes care of itself, and the more you listen to it, the better you're likely going to feel. So listen to your body. And if you're a caregiver with someone dying, ask yourself, are they clean? Are they safe? And are they comfortable? If those answers are yes, just be with them. I feel like it's more about being than about doing anything. And if
Right.
those answers aren't yes, then come ask the hospice team or whoever's helping you to help them be comfortable, or whatever it is you need. But a lot of times our heads spin because we're afraid, we're trying to fix stuff. But really, it's like we just need to calm down and just be with that person. There's a thing to do for the most part. Don't
I'm
do
so
anything.
glad. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because that was another question I had is how can we make it easier for people who are dying? And
Mm,
I think that's a huge thing is just listening. And that's I think I was trying too hard to pull it out of my grandmother because she was never somebody to communicate very well. She
yeah.
just was very just not reserved, but had trouble sharing her feelings. She had
Mhm.
trouble because she was that was how people a lot of people were raised just to shut down. And so I just kept trying to encourage her, like, how are you feeling? And she really didn't. But I really tried to be sensitive to that because how alienating it must be and
Mhm.
feeling like you have to put on a happy face for everybody else because you don't want them to feel bad. And I could just see myself being that way. And I know that she was like that too, just didn't want other people to fuss, didn't want them to worry.
Yeah.
But then who do you talk to? Unless you're somebody that feels comfortable reaching out to a therapist and saying, I need someone to talk to. But a lot of the older generation doesn't, for one thing.
Yeah.
And that's really important, I think. Is there anything else that we as loved ones, family members can do in the face of somebody close to us dying? How can we best care for them?
Hmm. I mean, it really depends on personality. So the big thing is like the big questions are they clean? Are they safe? Are they comfortable? Right? Clean, safe, comfortable. So those are the basics, right?
Yeah.
After that, I would go with how and who they are. Not everybody wants like peaceful music. Not everyone wants like a dark room, peaceful music to be kept in the corner. Shh. Like that is okay too if that's what people like, right? But also like some people might want different music, or some people might want people around, or some people might want to be alone. So kind of knowing the person's personality, right? You can't make someone die a certain way,
Yeah.
right? So it's everyone's own journey, knowing you've done the best you can. Not everyone's going to be willing to, you have to meet people where they're at. and tried to, I would say, like, uh, be around them like you normally would be, I suppose,
Mhm.
right? Like, don't talk about them like they're not there. Talk to them like they are there
Yeah.
still. Um, and when in doubt, like, ask. It's hard, and it can feel uncomfortable, but doesn't mean it's wrong. Before, if they can still respond, ask them,
Yeah.
how can I be there for you? Be the one person that feels comfortable with them saying really uncomfortable things. You know,
Mhm.
I'm afraid to die. And maybe they won't say anything. Maybe they'll say, I don't need any, like, I don't need anything, or, and then just either respect them, and just sort of do little things that you'd want, like clean the house, or even just be there with them, or stopping over for lunch, or um it's hard. It's really individualized.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like hard to give a generalized answer, but
I
in
think that is
general,
the
just try to
answer.
be with them how you
Yeah.
normally would be.
And I think you answered it just by saying it is an individual thing. Don't assume what somebody needs. Just ask them, what would you prefer? And
Yeah.
even when I asked my grandma, would you like me to be there with you when you pass? Would you like to be alone? I don't think we asked those questions, which is why my boyfriend thought it was so creepy that I was asking her these questions. But I was
Yeah.
like, wouldn't you want someone to ask you those questions if you were in her shoes? If so, I just think it's important to talk about the uncomfortable, because do you think the person who's dying is I mean,
Yeah.
it's not comfortable for them either.
Yeah.
So,
And even if they act uncomfortable with it, I feel like in the end they'll be grateful you did.
yeah, I do too. Now, has working in hospice, I know that you're not someone who's terrified of death, but like me, you love your life, you want to stay here as long as you can. Has working in hospice made you less afraid of death? The same? How has it changed your
Yeah.
perception of that?
It hasn't changed. I mean, I definitely am less afraid of death, or not. I wouldn't say afraid. I'm more like fascinated. I'm more like, wow, our bodies are amazing. And if I get, if I'm lucky enough to live long enough where I'm dying on hospice, and, I don't die from a car accident, or something like that. Right. And I die, I think I would like, if I have to die, I would like to die on hospice. So that's one gift that's given me. And yeah, I'm definitely not, it definitely has helped me be not afraid of death. But I also, it's easy for me to say when I'm not diagnosed with a terminal illness,
I
right? Like, I
know.
also feel like we're human, we're going to have a wide range of emotions. So if tomorrow I am diagnosed with something terminal, I definitely will have fear and anger and
Yeah.
sadness and resentment and all the things. But hospice has given me like a vision of what a death can look like, and that is what I'd want. That's how I hope I can put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
What's the saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah.
yeah. Like, I hope I can have the grace that I've seen others have, you know,
Yeah. I
and
know.
really um, do what I'm saying to do,
Yeah.
what I'm teaching.
Do you think you'll work in hospice for the rest of your life?
You never
Barring
know.
any,
You never
yeah.
say, I would say yes,
Yeah.
but you never know also. But I would say I would hope to. I would love to keep doing exactly what I'm doing right now.
Perfect. That's such a joy to be able to be of
Mhm.
such service, but also to love what you do
Yeah,
and have it bring you so much purpose and meaning. And can you tell us, and I'll put all the links underneath, but um, where can we find you and your videos? I know you have YouTube too. YouTube,
I do. So I have like
Instagram.
all of the things. I'm mostly engaging with TikTok and Instagram,
Yeah.
but I am on Facebook.
Okay.
So all of my stuff is on Facebook as well. And I'm on YouTube. YouTube is the thing I upload to least,
Yeah.
but there's still a whole ton of videos up there, and they're all under Hospice Nurse Julie, every one of them.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Do you think you'll ever write a book, or do you prefer the medium of just of video making videos? It's easier for sure, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, I prefer the medium of making videos because I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
However, I do have a literary agent who is putting a book deal together for me
Okay.
to pitch it to publishers.
I
So
figured you would.
it is somewhat in the works, but I still haven't like fully uh, put together like how I want to do it because I want to make it short. I don't think I just am not someone who would like sit down and read a book. So
Yeah,
to write that, it would be like, oh no, I can't. I don't even want to write that. So
I know.
it's going to be a little bit of information, a few, some stories. I haven't fully thought it through. And there's other things in the works too, like I have other people who are interested in what I'm doing and trying to get it on a greater scale, which I have zero desire
Right.
to do stuff like that. I am not motivated by money. Like I
Yeah.
but
You want
if
to,
someone's willing to kind of like put in the work and the money and help me do it, because then uh I may. I
yeah.
may do that. So it just depends. We'll see. I'm definitely not like hustling to go anywhere with this, which I don't think that's a bad thing because I feel like this thing kind of fell into my lap, it feels
Yeah.
like, and things are just unfolding. So I'm not one to not hustle, like I work hard, but I'm not one to
Yeah.
like, do you know what I mean by that? Like I live in
You're
Los
already
Angeles, so
fulfilled.
many people, yeah, so many people are like, oh, like it's just all about the hustle. Like, oh, I'm just not that.
I just left LA after 25 years. So that's,
Yes,
and
yes,
I'm in
I'm not that.
Virginia now. It's such a nice thing to be in Virginia away from all that because for 25
Yeah,
years I had adrenal fatigue, I
yes,
was having like 6 months in bed, cortisol level dump just from hustle, hustle, hustle all the time and all the stress and all the traffic. And
yes, I'm not that. No,
if it was fun in
not
my
about that life.
20s, yeah, it's fun when you're young, I guess, and then now I kept saying, "I just wanna go to the woods. I'm so tired." So I
Mhm.
left LA exactly pretty much exactly a year ago, so I understand that. Well, I just wanna thank you so much for being here and for sharing your insights and for doing what you do because more people, I think, need to talk about these things that people think are uncomfortable, but they're just part of life. Death is part of life. We
Yeah.
all face it. We all lose people we love. We all know that at one time or another, we're all going to the same place, wherever that may
Mhm.
be.
Yeah.
And I think the more we talk about it and bring it to life and stop avoiding it, I think we take so much fear out of it.
Yes. And we can really live in the
And
moment.
I just said that to one of my guests that uh, finding out about the afterlife, doing mediumship work has made me not as much not afraid of death as not afraid of life.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
this is a journey. We're visiting here. We all have something to learn. Hopefully, we have a lot of enjoyment and joy and peace and love amidst all the chaos that is this world. But I think people like you are the light workers of the world. And so thank you for your service. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being the greatest and for continuing to bring me joy when I say I love your videos.
Thank
So
you.
I just really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and
Such a
listen to me.
pleasure. Such a pleasure.